Good afternoon. This is Doug Rogers. It's October 5th.
This is Russell Rogers. We're the Rogers team from Keller Williams Southlake. Let's talk DFW real estate. Doug, let's talk about open houses.
Every great open house starts with great photography. You can't have a great open house without having a really nice virtual tour, multiple photographs in MLS, because what happens through that system is that when it goes into MLS, multiple listing service, it then goes to Trulia, Zillow, Realtor.com, Remax.com, HappyHoliday.com, ColdwellBanker.com, and every individual agent that has their own website, we have a reciprocal agreement amongst brokers that we're going to share that information. So if you have great photographs, it's going to proliferate all the way through to the different websites, and that's what draws the buyers in. But the question is, should you be having an open house and when?
Yeah, I definitely think you should, and at least the first 2 weekends. So you kind of see some drop off, and it depends on how you're going. If you have a lot of people coming to your open houses, you won't really need to continue because you probably would have been sold by then. But if it's a little slow or not as much traffic as you might have expected, maybe you want to have a few more, and it kind of depends. And then also, let's say you have 2 weekends, and then the house is still on the market, kind of a slow market right now for a lot of places, and then a month later you do a price reduction. That might be another good time to do an open house.
Yeah. Well, let's just even back up a minute. So whenever you as a homeowner are thinking about picking out a realtor, you should ask the 2 questions. Tell me about your photography, tell me about your virtual tours, and will you be holding my house open? Now, what you're going to find interesting is the younger the agent, the more inclined they are to want to hold the house open. And they should be excited about holding the house open and encouraging people to come see it. Sadly, a lot of the old agents, kind of like myself, started back in the 80s and 90s, really knew that open houses were just a gimmick to make the homeowner happy and kind of make it look like you were doing something. Because what happened back in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, where you'd put a sign out on the corner with an arrow, and you might put a 3-line ad in the newspaper under a section of open house and hope that someone saw that newspaper and showed up. And it really was a waste of time. But Russell, what's happened is Trulia, Zillow, and all the websites now have that little bitty icon that says we're having an open house this weekend.
Yeah, I think it's probably really increased the popularity of them, and I think people go even after baseball games, football games on Saturday mornings with the kids or whatever they're doing on the weekends, and they make it like part of their weekend plans where not a lot of people are driving by, see the signs, and pull over. It does happen occasionally, and they'll usually come in and say, yeah, I saw the sign and I came in, but most people are looking at these websites and coming in because of that. So it really has changed the game.
Yeah. Well, some fun tips about open houses if you're a realtor watching. If you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and the Cowboys play at noon, your open house should be 2 to 4. If the Cowboys are playing at 3, your open house should be 1 to 3, especially if it's on a Sunday. Now, what's really good on a Sunday, if you have it 1 to 3, you want to catch those folks that are driving home from church. They're going to get out of church somewhere around noon. They're going to stop and get the kids something to eat, and they're going to be. I can't tell you how many times I've been at open house, and the people who walk in are dressed up really nice, and they've got their kids all dolled up, and they've just come from church. And what's fun about open houses today versus 20 years ago is it can be a really narrow time frame. 1 to 3, 2 to 4. It doesn't have to be 1 to 5. I've held back in the day. I used to hold houses open from noon to 5, 1 to 5, 1 to 4. Really, 3 and 4 and 5 hours long. Right now, if you put it on the internet, we're going to be there between 1 and 3, 2-hour window. Don't miss it. You'll be amazed at how many people are going to show up between 1 and 1:30.
Oh yeah, they usually come in kind of like whatever time period. So maybe, if you do 1 to 3, sometimes nobody shows up until 2, but then everyone shows up between 2 and 2:30. It's kind of interesting, and that would be like a Saturday example, not a Sunday church example. But yeah, to your point, even the open house I'm doing this weekend, I looked at the UTOU game, right? And so I believe it starts at 11 or 11:30. So instead of doing 1 to 3, we did 2 to 4.
Yeah, good plan.
And so we should have more traffic in that manner. And funny story, one time you and I were actually looking when the Cowboys were pretty bad a few years ago on a Sunday together, and we noticed nobody's at the open house, and the girl was kind of lying to us a little bit, I think, and said that people were there, but we're like, it's the Cowboy game, and then we get to the back door and it's locked. So we kind of knew nobody had come so far, but it kind of just shows like the impact, and you really should be looking at essentially just the sporting events are the big ones. I know there's other stuff, back to school or different festivals or whatever, but the sporting events, especially football here in Texas, come on, let's get real, are the big ones.
Yeah, I would skip Labor Day, Memorial Day, those type of events, 4th of July. But another fun time is always hold an open house during spring break because people travel and come to town. They may be traveling from, let's say, California. How many Californians have you had in your open houses?
Oh yeah, and that's part of doing this too, is that the open houses give you such an opportunity for out-of-state buyers to come by. For them, they may not have an agent at all, and so they're coming by and looking at these open houses and looking on the different websites and showing up. And even recently, I think it's like 30 to 50%. I don't even know the number, to be honest. It's such a high amount of people that have come here. Mexico, California, Michigan, Minnesota, Chicago. It's just nonstop with people moving here.
Yeah, I held an open house in March, Marshall Ridge. Keller property is priced right around 800, and had 14 couples come through. I know for a fact 4 of the couples were from California. 3 of the couples from California were in the house at the same time. One was wearing a USC shirt, and one of the guys watched, said, "Hey, I went to USC too. What are you doing?" And they were talking about their jobs and what was bringing them to Texas. And then an older couple, just out of earshot, said, "Hey, we're here from San Diego. We're moving here too." And I talked to her, "Why are you moving here?" I said, "Well, it's just we can sell our house at such a high price and come here and buy twice the house for half the price, and cost of living is so much better here. We just couldn't pass up on this opportunity." So the California thing moving to Texas, it's real and it's happening every week.
Yeah, and not just California, because there is a high population of Californians moving here for sure. But I've also noticed a lot of Midwest people too, Ohio and Michigan and Illinois, Chicago and everything, and they move here for that kind of area is dwindling economically, at least in comparison. And then I think they like the schools here a lot better. The public schools, they're picking areas with those better schools, going to these open houses and trying to find something.
Well, I've found open houses are worth their weight in gold. And again, if you're talking to an agent, you're interviewing them for the first time, ask them how many times they're going to hold your house open. And if they say it's just not worth it or they don't have time, find a different agent.
Yeah, and going back to those pictures, I don't think we could stress it enough too. Those pictures are getting sent out to everybody. Everyone's going to these websites, and if you don't have those good pictures, they're not going to go to your open house either. So they're not going to be interested looking on MLS with an agent, and they're not going to be interested showing up and just taking a look either.
Yeah. I've found that anytime I've got an offer from someone that's been in an open house when there was 4 or 5 couples in there with them, it's possible that one offer came in and no other offers came in, but they don't know that. They get the impression that since there's 4 or 5 couples in the house and they're looking at the house and they want it, they're going to have to make a higher quality offer. And so if you get the right open house, the right atmosphere, you get the herd theory of sales working in your advantage, then the frenzy starts. And you can have a frenzy of one. They just don't always know that it's a frenzy of one.
Yeah, there's definitely information asymmetry.
Now, let's look at the flip side of the open house. Let's say you're the buyer's agent or you're representing buyers and your buyers want to see the house. It's important to go to the open house and watch the atmosphere. When I'm going to take someone to an open house, I always go at the beginning. If it's 1 to 3, I get there at 1. If it's 2 to 4, I get there at 2. 2:05, I want to see how many people walk in, and I want my buyers to see the atmosphere of the open house, if it has a lot of people or if it has nobody. Because if we walk in there and it's quiet as a mouse and there's 24 cookies on a tray and there's no one's taking one and there's 20 bottles of water and they're all sitting there and no one's taking one, we know after a few minutes we can watch the atmosphere and see, we may not have to negotiate that hard on this house. We may get a discount on this house. We may be able to go in a little lower than what we had planned because there's nobody here. And if there's no activity on this house and it's the house that the buyers want, then we can negotiate.
Yeah, and another thing, a lot of people are going to open houses that are represented but don't go with the agent. It's kind of been more of a norm after COVID. I think maybe the COVID mania, because agents were spread so thin with so many people buying and making offers and different things. But the percentage, in my experience, it's just a theory, I guess. I don't have a data point, but that the number of people going to open houses are represented, but their agent's not there, which I think is lazy. We can talk about that in a second, but it just shows the importance. That kind of is their showing. They may not even schedule one. They're either going to like it or they're not. And maybe if they do, then they go with their agent later. But it's really important. They're not all looky-loos. Some of these people really are there to make an offer and are represented and ready to go. So I think the level or the quality of buyers at open houses has increased after COVID.
Okay, well, here's one more point. If you're a buyer and you go look at a house without your realtor, insist that your realtor go look at the house. It's important to do two things, especially insist that they go the next day or that afternoon and make them make an appointment to see the house. Now, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it really is a big deal to make an appointment to go see the house, so they can advise you on value, condition, and that type of thing. But here's the tip that people don't get. By making an appointment in the broker-based system or the showing time system, you are now in a bulk email with the listing agent for any changes of status. So if it's we're getting 5 offers or multiple offers coming in, we need to have those multiple offers in by noon on Monday. They'll be in that bulk email list and they won't miss out on that notification. And secondly, there might be a price reduction. They need to be notified. They need to be on top of things. But if they don't take the time to go look at the house, register in the system, they can miss out on an opportunity to get the offer in by 5 o'clock or be aware of the price reduction. You need to have that happen for your agent. If your agent's not willing to take that effort and say, hey, you saw it already, don't worry, I can write an offer without seeing a house, get a better agent.
Yeah, I hate when my clients go see open houses without me. I do not want them to go because I need to see the house. I can notice things that other people don't. I can notice if there's a crack in the foundation. There's so many times I've been through the house. We'll walk over the same floor and I'll turn to the client and say, that feel weird to you? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I think there's something wrong with this foundation. Yep. You walk right here again. And they're like, oh yeah. And then we go outside, there's a giant crack up the wall. And it's like, without me being there, we wouldn't know that. And so you can go and look, but I want to be there. You're not bothering me. It's, I don't want to bother my agent. Man, that sounds crazy to me. There's no point in time where a client contacts me to do anything where it's bothering me, especially not showing a house.
Oh, I always love to show a house. Any chance we get, we're going to go see the house. You want to talk a little bit about what's happening?
Yep. What do the numbers say this week?
Well, it's a little disconcerting on 2 points. You would think that we went through our lull and we're going to start building up the listing inventory. But the listing inventory is staying flat and shrinking. For example, in the Grapevine, Colleyville, Keller, Southlake area, 40 new listings. Week before is 43. 32 went under contract, and we have 320 active listings in that group of cities. And the week before we had 320, so it's staying flat. In the Alliance area, added 46 new listings. 30 went under contract in the last 7 days. Total listings, 390. That's a little bit down from the week before, because the week before we were at 409. Flower Mound, Capel, Highland Village added 20 listings. 17 went under contract in the last week. But the listing inventory is down 208 from 217. It really should be up a little bit. We should be trending up and having a little more volume of listings. And then the Plano, Frisco area, last 7 days, added 72 listings. Week before we had an 85. That's trending down. Active option in the last week, 62. Previous 61 stayed about the same. But overall listings in the marketplace is 649. The week before, the total listings was 672. And to me, it should be trending the other direction. We should be stepping up in the number of units available. So that's a little bit of a concern.
And then you had some numbers for us about some price reductions.
Yeah, here's something I thought I'd just out of curiosity take a look at how prices were changing. A year ago, there was never a price reduction, unless it was just some insane, crazy deal. If you had 50 houses, one of them had a price reduction. And the year before that, there were almost never price reductions. So I thought, well, let's take a look at some of the cities individually and see if there's any price reductions or the ratio of price reductions to active listings. In the city of Grapevine, I used the zip code for Grapevine and just pulled up the city of Grapevine, and there were 66 active listings in Grapevine. 30 of those 66 listings had a price reduction. Let's go over to Capel. 36 listings active over there. 20 of those 36 had a price reduction. In the Flower Mound area, there was 152 listings, and 67 of those houses have had a price reduction. So that just, it's almost trending. Half of the houses on the market, or 40% of the houses on the market, have had a price reduction. So that tells me that we're lagging behind and not getting them sold as quickly as we were.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We're in a very strange situation where there's not enough listings, but then the listings aren't selling, or there's the certain areas and certain houses aren't selling. So it's kind of a strange dynamic here where it can kind of go either way, but we're kind of almost stuck in limbo, and in a very strange one at that.
Well, but there are situations like the house I had listed in Las Colinas. It had multiple offers, sold immediately. I haven't got another listing out in Fort Worth that's a beautiful house. It's actually the same price as the one in Las Colinas, and it's struggling.
Yeah, to your point last week, that the closer you get to the high density population areas, the Irving, not inner city, but inside, the closer you get to the large economic areas, they're selling a lot faster. Where even if you move out to Alliance, which doesn't seem outside of the city center, it still is in comparison, and things are sitting there. And
Yep. Well, I think the bottom line here is if you're buying a house this weekend in one of those cities, hard look at the market analysis, good look at the comparables, and make an offer.
make an offer, and depending on your situation and the house's situation that you're looking at, just because it has a price reduction doesn't mean you can't go lower.
No, that's why we look at the comps, because if it was overpriced by 50 and they lowered it by 40, it's still not low enough.
Exactly.
So we want to make sure that we determine the price. And that's one of our processes we use in looking at market analysis is we ignore the list price. Once we decide this is the house, we ignore the list price, and we develop our own theory, our own strategy of what the house should be, what should be the correct price on this house. And then we say, okay, what are we willing to buy it? Then we subtract off that number, and then we work toward the client's number, not the list price.
Yeah, and also if you really want to get into it too, if the house is vacant, it looks like they've already moved. If the house has been on the market for a long period of time, they've already had several price reductions. There's a little bit more blood in the water in that situation. And maybe if you're the type of person like me who wants to be very frugal and get a lower, buy the house for a lower amount, that might be something to look at and to take a stab at a lower than list price. And, there's some dynamics there. You need to talk to your agent, us obviously, about that. But there's some opportunities that are going to be coming up.
Yep. So get ready. If you're on the buying side, if you're on the selling side, make sure you got a good agent, great pictures, great virtual tour, and hold that house open.
Well, thanks everybody for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.